Support comes from BECU, a member-owned credit union putting people over profit, offering financial services and support to the community with access to local financial centers, over 30,000 ATMs, and online resources at becu.org. Federally insured by NCUA.
Hey, it's Patricia Murphy. It's Thursday. This is Seattle Now. Your favorite restaurant will soon be able to reopen. Halfway, just 50% for now, but line cooks, servers, and other frontline workers in the hospitality industry are frustrated that they're still not eligible to get a COVID vaccine. In a minute, Chef Rivera tells us why he thinks that needs to happen now. But first, let's get you caught up. Seattle police are looking for a man they say walked into a South Seattle church and killed someone. They say he entered Emerald City Bible Fellowship on Rainier Avenue South, shot a man, then fled. SPD says at the time there were 40 people inside. Police say they believe they know who the suspect is. The names of 6 SPD officers who were in D.C. for the Stop the Steal rally in January will stay under wraps for now. A state appeals court sided with the officers and extended an order which will put things on hold for a few more weeks when the court will revisit. Meanwhile, Seattle's Office of Police Accountability is still looking into whether any of the officers stormed the Capitol or broke any laws. Chief Diaz says if they did, they'll be fired immediately. And maybe you order your groceries from Amazon, but how about healthcare? The tech company is expanding its Amazon Care telemedicine program to employers nationwide. Right now, for most users, it's just an app that connects them virtually with doctors and nurses. But Amazon sees a future in in-person services like pharmacy delivery and nurse house calls. More people are becoming eligible to get the COVID vaccines. This latest group includes lots of essential workers, people in agriculture, grocery stores, and prisons. What this group does not include is restaurant and hospitality workers, and that's not sitting well. Many say the risks are comparable and even escalating with reopening during Phase 3. A petition with more than 5,000 signatures was sent to the governor this week, calling on him to include restaurant and hospitality workers in the latest round of vaccines. Rivera is here to talk about it. He's a chef and owner at Addo restaurant in Seattle. Eric, good to talk to you again.
Hi, thanks for having me on again. I really appreciate it.
So, were you surprised that restaurant workers weren't included in this latest round? What did you think?
Yeah, it's kind of odd because we've been called essential workers from the beginning, and it doesn't seem to be that way. So I'm trying to figure out, when they talk about things, how essential are we? But it's also frustrating because we have employees, we have guests that, we're not doing indoor dining for that particular reason. So we're trying to make sure we can keep everybody safe, even more so over the last year. But I think the biggest issue that we have kind of continuing on is we're going to keep on expanding occupancy rates, and we're just going to have to deal with it.
Right. And I want to talk to you about your decision a little bit to not reopen your restaurant. You're not going to do this in Phase 3. Is that my understanding?
No, we're not going to do any of it probably through the end of the year, if not longer. There's people that even if they have a vaccine available to them, they're not going to want to get it. And there's no way of me knowing effectively in a very efficient manner of someone being in my restaurant that has COVID or not still to this date, a year later. And a lot of the safety things that are out there are very performative. They don't really mean anything. Checking somebody's temperature, asking them questions, showing them a vaccine card. It's still really, you're kind of rolling the dice. And we haven't had to close over this last year. The last thing I want to do is open up in Phase 3 and in the first week have to close because somebody reports they got COVID at my restaurant. So that seems very counterintuitive.
So I just want to break it down because there's a lot of concerns for people who do run a restaurant about how vaccines could actually work for them. If restaurant workers were vaccinated, that would create an envelope essentially around in a business and protect the workers, right? How would that work?
It would be a lot better for them. It doesn't necessarily, at the end of the day, save everything because you still have guests coming in. Yeah. And that's the variable. You also have guests that are using water glasses, spilling things. On St. Patrick's Day, somebody throwing up in a bathroom. I mean, to be graphic, but that's what happens. We clean up a lot of stuff. We clean up a lot of things from people, bathrooms, all this kind of stuff that our employees are still exposed to. So It doesn't necessarily end everything for them, but it reduces the issues. So that's what the odd thing for me is, seeing a lot of, hey, let's raise all of these occupancy rates, let's get people back in, let's open things up. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the safest scenario for people inside of a restaurant.
And let's talk about what phase 3 would look like inside of a restaurant. We're talking about we'll move to 50% capacity at some point. What does that mean for the front of the house and the back of the house? What does that look like?
Well, initially, if you're moving from, let's just say something from 25% to going to 50%, that's going to increase staff on both sides. That's going to increase people coming to your restaurant all the way through. It might even actually, make people want to expand hours to a certain time. They're going to be nicer weather if they have a patio, more people. All this does is create more contact. All this does is create more people wanting to come to this space, which, we're not done with this pandemic. We're still hovering around numbers of cases from July, when that was supposed to be the worst time. And so, we're really not at a point where anybody should be patting themselves on the back or looking at, the light at the end of the tunnel.
Do you think that restaurant owners are feeling, who have been able to stay open, maybe they're doing takeout right now, are feeling pressure to open more broadly during phase 3?
Yes. And there's a reason why. There's a few reasons why. One, we've been doing this for a year. Two, rent still has to be paid for a lot of restaurants. It's just what happens. It seems to me like it's very careless and very quick for not much gain. There's way too much, negativity that can come from it, from positivity. It's like, yeah, you can check off and say, hey, we're open, it's cool, but it's not. It's very performative and it's not safe. There's other places around the country, Las Vegas and Los Angeles and New York City and the state of Arkansas yesterday said restaurant hospitality workers, I don't know why we're so behind, especially since we had some of the first cases. It seems very just like we're just kind of have to deal with it and move on.
The governor's office did get a petition recently from the Restaurant Association, signed by more than 5,000 hospitality and restaurant workers, demanding to be put in this latest phase. Eric, I heard just in checking back, yes, the petition was acknowledged, but there has been no response from the governor. His plan was intentional, to vaccinate for mortality, to vaccinate people who were older, to not vaccinate for community spread. It sounds like you think that was a mistake, but there's really no perfect way.
There really isn't a perfect way. But when you're creating more contact through softening regulations, then you kind of have to change. Because I'll tell you what, over the last year of having to make changes in my restaurant, and the famous word pivoting now, we've had to pivot hundreds of different ways. And I started out wanting to do one thing, and a week later something changed, and a week later something changed, and a week something, So if I can do it, they can do it, because they have a lot more resources available to them. And they'll have a lot smarter people than myself that they can talk to say, hey, listen, here's a precedence that's been set in the other states. Here's a study that was in California that showed, the number one people that were being affected by, COVID were line cooks and people were working in restaurants. And furthermore, around the state of Washington, 30% of the people that this is affecting is Latino community, but only 15%, if that, are vaccinated. So once you start looking at a lot of those types of things, you can kind of like pick your own path of where you want to go. But for me right now, if we're adding more people, we need to put more shots in more people. And that's what it comes down to. And so including more people who are in the path of that, I don't necessarily want to see more people die before they say, okay, cool, let the restaurants and hospitality people do it. I want to say, hey, here's a preventative measure that we have, a tool and a resource through a vaccine. Let's do it.
Eric, we have real hope now for the first time since the pandemic began, thanks to these vaccines. And restaurants and hotels are a very big part of our reentry.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to see it. I mean, we're a touristy town. You already see it. I drive by Pike Place Market every day. I drive by, the typical places, and I see more and more people here on the weekends. I've seen a lot of California plates. I live in a building in Capitol Hill, and there's a lot of California plates there, kind of creeping in more and more. So as we kind of see that through spring and summertime, it's just going to hit that way. We have a lot more people that are the older generation that's going to say, hey, I have my vaccine, time for a cruise. These are all the things they've been waiting on. They want to come see grandchildren. They want to come have some time off and get away from the house. I get it. I understand that. It totally makes sense. The support system is restaurant and hospitality for that. So make sure you get shot into the arms of restaurant and hospitality people first.
Yeah. Well, I'll speak for myself. I will probably not be doing any indoor dining until I am vaccinated, and I'll stick to takeout. Eric, a lot of listeners have been ordering takeout. How else can they support restaurants during this time?
It's hard because it puts it's such an interesting thing because it's put so much on guests to help us. And it necessarily shouldn't be that way. I mean, we should have had a lot more government interaction, all this stuff. But, one thing that could be done is make a rotation, I guess, kind of find out some other different places that aren't necessarily maybe your vibe or your palate. Do a little discovery, do a little bit of mystery tour, if you will. There's a lot of places that need help.
Eric Rivera, chef and owner at Addo restaurant in Seattle. Thank you. Good to talk to you, man.
Good to see you. Awesome. Thank you.
Seattle Now is produced by Caroline Chamberlain Gomez, Clare McGrane, and Jason Pagano. Matt Jorgensen does our music. I'm Patricia Murphy. See you tomorrow.